Again, my name is David Tolles. I'm an admissions counselor here at the University of Wisconsin Riverfalls. I've been on campus for 3 years now. I came to Riverfalls to complete part of my master's degree. So my undergraduate degree is from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I studied agricultural business and environmental studies. After graduation, I worked at College Possible in Milwaukee as a college coach, focusing on college success for our students. And then when I left CP, I started a master's program in May and was looking for an assistantship / full-time position to keep working in higher education. And the position at Riverfalls opened up. So I applied for that. When I first got on campus, I was the multicultural outreach coordinator. And in that role, I supported students of color, students who are first generation, and students who are Pell Grant eligible through the application, admission, and enrollment process. I've since added on transfer student advising and then a little bit of our database management into my role as well too. But a big chunk of my current role and program is still working with students on the college application process, getting students through the process, helping students kind of figure out whether or not Riverfalls is going to be a good place for them to live, learn, and grow during their kind of college experience and things like that. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to share screen. And you all should see a poll everywhere. Just give me a thumbs up if we got that. Okay, perfect. I like to kind of just use this to kind of get a gauge from students, just to kind of get an idea for what students are thinking about as they're kind of figuring out what makes sense for them in their kind of college process. So if you're on a laptop or on your cell phone, just go ahead. You can text in there. You can also just open up another web page, but throw in there. But the question is, why do you want to go to college, right? What interests you in going to college? What have you heard about college that makes you want to go? Poll everywhere is really helpful to visualize this. But if you use a lot of words, it's going to come over kind of jumbled. So 1 or 2 words is typically going to be the best for us to see that. So go ahead, like I said, either text that, open another browser and throw that in there. And then we'll see what you all have to say about that. And if someone has sent one and it's not showing up, let me know. Good job. Job good. I'm assuming someone wrote they want a good job. Okay. So we're thinking kind of like career path type stuff, growth. I hear that one a lot of times from students as well. To be challenged. Okay, that's a good one. Learning. You will do a lot of learning in college if we do our jobs correctly at the institution. To be successful, that's a piece that I talk about with students a lot, is how college sets you up for success, the role that we play at institutions, and how do we help you be successful. Networking is a big one for a lot of students when it comes to internships, first year employment, figuring out what makes sense for them, what are they interested in, all that kind of fun stuff. Independence, that's a big one I hear a lot from students as well too, especially students who are the first in their family to go to college, or the first, maybe of younger siblings, but you're the first one out of the house. That was a big thing for me. I come from a single parent household, so that was definitely a change for my mom. Our family dynamic was me being off in college. The independence piece is big. fun. You will have a lot of fun in college. That can be, it's a lot of time for you to live and learn and grow. And a lot of that comes from the independence. A lot of that comes from that networking, that growth, being challenged and being able to meet people from all over the world, all over the country. So these are all fantastic reasons. Experiences, friendship, being able to travel, study abroad. I can tell you've all thought about this at some point in time before, so it's great to hear and see. Okay, perfect. So I like to start with this exercise. Excuse me. I like to start with this exercise because I think it kind of sets up the rest of our conversation, right? So me being able to know what's important for you all as you're looking at different institutions and exploring different colleges kind of sets us up for success moving forward with that. I have one more question for you all. I'm interested to know what major / area of study you're interested in. We've got a ton of programs here on campus. And I really want to make sure that I am covering the things that are most important to you all, and hopefully opening up your eyes to some things that you might not have thought about, which could be good options for you too. Business, psychology, criminal justice, bio, music, art. Dentistry. Perfect. Pre-vet, okay. Okay, it looks like we're all over the spectrum across all of our colleges, which I'm on campus, which is good. I'll make sure I cover all of that. Okay, I don't see any others rolling in. I got another psychology in there. Okay. Perfect. I'll stop sharing that. We'll jump over here. Okay. Are we all seeing our academic slide? Perfect. So, University of Wisconsin Riverfalls, if you're not familiar, is situated in Riverfalls, Wisconsin. I'm about 40 minutes straight east of the halfway point between downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis. This is the best way that we like to describe it for students. So the independence piece that I heard about a little bit earlier, what I typically hear from my students in the Minnesota side is that we're close enough to home where if you need to go home, see the family, hang out with the family, get a really good home cooked meal, it's not a super big process for you and the family to figure that part out. But we're also far enough away that you do get your own sense of independence. Like families typically not going to stop over on Tuesday nights just to kind of check in and see how things are going. They can if you need them to be, but it's most likely not going to happen as often as that kind of sets itself up for you. So you do get to kind of get that kind of sense of independence for us. We are a small to medium-sized campus, they call us. We've got about 6,000 total students. Like I said, we'll jump into academic programs first. And then we'll kind of do some more student body type stuff. And then we'll end with financial aid, tuition, scholarships, more kind of nitty-gritty type numbers and things like that. So we have 4 colleges here on campus. The biggest is a College of Arts and Sciences. It's split into these kind of 3 different sections, right? So you've got science and math, social and behavioral sciences, and then arts and humanities, that kind of 3rd section. You've all taken science and math courses in your high school experience. I'm pretty confident in that. So you probably have a good idea for what those mean. Anyone who's looking at kind of our pre-medical area or field is probably looking at the biomedical and health science track. Anyone who's talked about, I want to be a pre-med major, it's not really a major, it's a track. So medical school requires that you complete some sort of general education prerequisite requirements, and our biomedical and health science program has those courses built in for you. So you'd be a biomedical and health science major on a pre-med track, or on a pre-dentistry track, or a pre-physician assistant track. And then we work with you to kind of support you through that entire process. All of our programs on the science and math side also have an education base with it as well. So if you want to be a high school biology teacher or a high school chemistry teacher, or you want to be a high school math teacher, all those programs have a teaching component tied to it as well. Social and behavioral sciences, it's a study of us as people. How do we interact with each other? How do we interact with the worlds around us? And what do those interactions look like for me and you? So if you're interested in people, learning more about people, and having a lot of those really good connections, I saw a lot of psychology in there. So some really cool programs for us within the kind of social and behavioral science realm. Arts and humanities, for my folks who are more creative, want to tap into that part of their brain. TESOL, if you're wondering, that TESOL, that's teaching English to speakers of other languages. A lot of my students in TESOL want to either be ESL, ELL teachers here in the US, or they want to teach English abroad. That program has a study abroad component automatically tied into it. So for students who have that interest, it can be a really cool program for them right away as well. And then marketing communications, if you're wondering about that program too, it's another common question I get. That program is different than business marketing in that it focuses more on public relations, PR type stuff. It doesn't have the traditional business, accounting, or finance or math tied to it. So sometimes we'll get students who are interested in advertising or graphic design pieces that want to get into the business world, but don't want to go through the math or accounting aspect of it. And they'll go the marketing communications route. Speaking of business, next is College of Business and Economics. Again, we talked about those areas: finance, management, marketing, and professional sales encompass our business administration program. Accounting is a standalone degree. That's because of licensure requirements to sit for the CPA exam. Computer science, information systems, data science, and then predictive analytics, and then economics kind of rounds us out in College of Business and Economics. We call it CBE here on campus. They have an AACSB accreditation. That's a fancy title that doesn't mean that much to you now. But if you are interested in business, I definitely encourage students to look at the accreditation of the school that they're applying to. That matters very heavily to future employers, folks who are looking at you for internships and things like that. So AACSB is the top accreditation in the world, and you want to make sure that the business school that you're applying to has a great accreditation for you as well. College of Education and Professional Studies. So all my folks who talked about being a teacher, elementary education and secondary education. We started as a state normal school back in 1874, so we've been teaching teachers the longest. So put Riverfalls on the map as an institution, something that we think we're still pretty good at to this day as well. Secondary education has a broad bunch of different programs under it, like I mentioned earlier with the science and math section. So you want to be a social studies teacher, if you want to be an art teacher, you want to be a music teacher, all those programs are already built into that kind of secondary education piece. And you'll get the College of Education side, but then also your specific content area side as well too. Communication sciences and disorders and social work. Those are two programs on campus that are housed in the professional studies side of the house. Almost all of those students are preparing to go on for a master's degree. So their academic coursework is built around that for them as well too. Lastly, for us is the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences. This is our second biggest college here on campus, but it does house our largest program, which is animal science. So we have been a top feeder school for several vet schools across the country for a number of years now, and send students to vet schools all across the country in both equine and companion animalship. Companion animal is cats and dogs, cute little furry things you tend to keep at home. Equine is horses, and then meat animals, pretty much anything you see on a farm. That's all encompassed in that kind of pre-veterinary track. Again, similar to pre-med, pre-vet has some specific requirements that you fulfill that prepares you to go on for and to veterinary school. Dairy science, food science, and technology work very closely together. We make our own ice cream here on campus. We make our own cheese here on campus, and that's all processed in our dairy pilot plant as well too. Plant and earth science are a lot of my students who are interested in climate change, the environment, the world, the impact that we as people have on those two things as well. Out of that, a lot of that comes through my plant earth science students. So tons of ways for students to get involved. We have a ton of hands-on experience in the classroom setting, internships, research, things like that, that students can do in that area as well. And then anything agriculture related kind of gets wrapped up into its own program in there too. Ag biz, ag education, agricultural studies is a super broad-based program. And then agricultural engineering was our first engineering program on campus. And we've expanded that to include a couple others within physics and environmental engineering as well. So that's kind of the broad based on majors and programs. Does anyone have any immediate questions on any of those majors, programs, things like that before I go on? And you're all minimized on my screen, so if anyone's in the chat box, I can't see that. So if someone wants to
we can let you know if anybody types anything in the chat.
Perfect, thanks, Kyle. Okay, we'll jump a little bit ahead then, and then we can obviously come back to majors and programs if anything else comes up from that standpoint. Next piece is going to be value, right? So one of the things that I talk a lot with students about is cost of your education, and what does that look like for you as you're thinking about making an investment into your future. So for us, we talk a lot about our tuition, our living on campus, eating on campus, and all the things that that includes for us in there as well too. So as Minnesota residents, your tuition puts you right around $9,000. Your double room and your meal plan, 14 meals per week is our average, is what most students choose. That basically means you get 14 meals on Sunday, and then you can decide how you want to spread those throughout the week. So if you're really big into sleeping in and you're like, I'm not going to get up early enough for breakfast, and you do lunch and dinner. Otherwise, we'll have students who will want to get up for breakfast, but maybe they have classes all throughout lunch, and so they're working on snacks for lunch, and they'll kind of spread that out for whatever makes sense for them. Again, 14 weeks is what most students choose. You can go up to 19, and there typically is an unlimited plan as well for students in that piece. So total cost for students when it comes to academics, living on campus, eating on campus, push you right around $15,600 or so. And that's for the academic year. So if you're looking per semester, you would then further divide that in half or so, but that kind of gives you a rough estimate for us. A couple important things as far as student fees go, everything's included in that tuition number already. So access to all of our facilities, access to tutoring services, our sports and recreation facility, your academic advisor, our career services, our Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, any of the fun things you'll do in your residence hall with your RA are included in that double room fee. Any of those kind of individual events you'll do with student organizations or clubs is already included in there as well. And then textbooks. So you'll rent your textbooks with us directly on campus. It's an additional cost that you don't have to worry about. If anyone is curious, the average textbook cost for a college student for a year is about $1,200. And that's average kind of across the country. And for most schools, that's not included in tuition. So definitely make sure that you're looking at different institutions that you're applying to and figuring out and seeing if textbooks are already included in tuition or if that's an additional cost that you'll have to pay for outside of that as well. I'll also say we don't charge per credit. University of Wisconsin system has a tuition plateau. So 12 to 18 credits for us will cost you the same. 12 credits will typically make students be a full-time student. 15 credits will be the average if you are planning to graduate in 4 years and not planning on taking any additional courses, or you're not bringing in any additional courses. You need 120 overall credits for graduation. So you do some quick math. 15 credits over 8 semesters get you to that 120 credit total piece in there as well. We do offer a variety of scholarships for our students as well, because we know that that 16,000 number is still a fairly high number for a lot of our students too. So we have 2 first-year scholarships that are our general admission scholarships. The first one is based on academic merit and criteria when it comes to GPA, rigor of courses, if you're taking any like honors or AP or IB, PSEO, dual enrollment type courses and things like that. We use that for our honors academic merit scholarship. We are test optional for admission and for scholarships. We'll talk about the admission process in a second, but I do not need an ACT or an SAT score for scholarships. All of our scholarships here on campus have we made it a priority that if students send in an ACT or an SAT score, other students will also not be disadvantaged by not having an ACT or an SAT score. So we review all of our students individually amongst themselves, not in a greater pool when it comes to scholarship piece. Our Falcons Fly Higher scholarship is based on academic leadership, involvement. We're not going to look at your specific like GPA for that, but we'll look at the other things that are important to you and make up who you are as a student. So the things that you tell us in your Falcons Fly Higher essay, there's 5 essay prompts students choose from in there. And then we read through those at the admissions office. We look at your biography, and then we look at your activities and involvement. And then scholarship dollars are awarded to students on that front as well. We have an equal split between our academic merit scholarships and our leadership and involvement scholarships as well for students too. So we don't prioritize one or the other when it comes to students. We have a split base for that. Chancellor Scholars, Falcon Scholars, those are our 2 highest scholarships here on campus. Those will look at GPAs in the 3.75 range or above. Those have an and/or criteria. So you can have a certain GPA or a certain ACT score or have a certain class rank. This depends on what information you send us from your high school. Diversity Success is my specific scholarship that specifically supports first-year students who are Pell Grant eligible, students who are first generation and students who identify as students of color on their application. I award that out to students typically every March or so. Almost all of our scholarships have a February 1st deadline for the following fall. The Falcons Fly Higher Scholarship we will continue to accept applications until we award all of the money out of that pocket. The Chancellor Scholars does have a January 1st deadline in there. We tell students to apply by January 1st as kind of our priority deadline. That's why you see it listed there. But the scholarship system itself will kick you out. It won't allow you to submit after February 1st, except for our Falcons Fly Higher scholarship. So we use January 1 as kind of our priority scholarship deadline, knowing that some students will still go up until February 1 in there as well. Let me jump back. Any questions on the scholarship piece or the actual overall cost of tuition? I didn't talk about FAFSA a ton. I always encourage students to fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid that goes live October 1st of your senior year. That will play an important role in your kind of your college decision process. For us, we aim to get our first year scholarships out by, our goal is March 15th every year. Your FAFSA, that information, financial aid will start sending a financial aid offer award letter back to you starting December 15th traditionally. But FAFSA will include any of your federal grants. So if you're Pell Grant eligible or CIOG, which is supplemental grant, and then your student loans, and then also if you're eligible for work study in there as well. And then we'll follow up with an additional letter if you are awarded a scholarship too, so you can see that with your given overall cost of attendance as well. So that's my plug for FAFSA. Please do your FAFSA. Other questions on financial aid, scholarship type stuff?
Are these scholarships just for first year, or are they renewable throughout your 4 years?
Chancellor Scholars is renewable. Falcon Scholars is renewable. Our admission scholarships are just for students first year. Diversity Success can have a renewable component. Students need to meet some specific requirements to get that renewed. And then the rest of our campus scholarships really kick in for students in their first year, or after their first year, I should say. So we start looking about individual majors and programs and departments and things like that. A lot of them don't have first year student scholarships, which is why the admissions office has so many. So continuing student scholarships really start when students have been on campus for a year and are in their program.
Thank you.
Yep.
David, we did have a student that asked if you had any information about the diversity rate.
Yes, I have information. So this is a question that I talk about this from two different perspectives, right? I'm a data guy, so I look at the data on one side of it, but I also look at what's my anecdotal piece from the students that I interact with and hear about. Currently, we have currently at 11% students of color. It's 11.6% students of color on campus. If you look across the UW system, it's about average for the state of Wisconsin. There are some schools that are higher, there are some schools that are lower, but given where we kind of are in the UW system, it's about average across the state of Wisconsin. The vast majority, but here's the caveat to that. The vast majority of our students of color come from the Twin Cities. I would say probably right around 2/3 or so of our students of color on campus are from the Twin Cities area. So when I talk from folks from UW system, it's a little bit different of my experience as compared to some other of my partner institutions. What I talk with students about is finding an institution that feels like it's going to be a good fit for you. Finding students on that campus who you can relate with and have some shared common experiences with as part of that as well. I'll talk about the Aspire program. I think I have that in a later slide, but we can talk about that now. So Aspire supports students who are students of color, students who are first generation, or students who are Pell Grant eligible. It's a first year mentorship program. So we match you up with a mentor who's a sophomore, junior, or senior. We try and match up by either could be similar academic program, might be from the same high school or hometown, or something else that you all have in common based on who our mentors are and then what students fill out on the Aspire application. What happens then is you'll have that mentor for the year. You'll have two full-time staff members who oversee that program. One is our Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging director, who really does a lot more of the kind of social emotional support, right? That kind of like college transition type stuff. How do I feel about this space? How do I fit in? What's that kind of sense of belonging look like for me as a student? And then Ian is the other director who works on the director of student success side, and his focus is more on the academic side, right? Are we going to class? What grades are we getting? Do we need to get you in for a special tutoring session? Like what are some of our specific academic barriers that we're looking at? And Martin and Ian work very closely together in supporting students through that process. And then again, that mentor is there as a current student who can talk with students through the process, help with a lot of that kind of first year transition type stuff. They do a retreat in the fall and right before the semester starts. Typically COVID impact that a little bit this year, but typically they do a retreat, really kind of help students kind of gauge, what's the first couple of weeks going to be like, right? How do I talk to my roommate for the first time when we actually live together? How do I navigate the dining halls? How do I know when to go talk to my advisor? How early do I get to class? Where is this classroom space at? How do I join an intramural league, right? There's things that we as admissions folks tell students to do, and then a lot of times students aren't set up for success in how to do things when they get on campus, and Aspire tries to close that gap for a lot of our students in that process. The other program that I typically highlights is SSS, which is our Student Support Services. That's a federal TRIO program. That's on pretty much every college campus across the country. That support, you get an academic coach within there who does pretty consistent, almost weekly check-ins with students. They also have a mentorship program built in there too. They have some upperclassmen peer mentors who work with students, just kind of as a resource, so that if you have questions, you're not really sure who to go to, that you always have somebody on campus who can help you with that, who can help you figure out what makes the most sense for you, and figuring out what those resources are going to be on campus as well too. Diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Excuse me. Martin and his folks in that office do a lot of work for campus programming type stuff. They also oversee all of our student organizations and clubs. So our Black Student Union, our Asian American Student Union, our LSO, which is our Latinx Student Union. Those are all oversaw by Martin and his staff. They host different campus events. They do different events out in the community. They've taken different field trips and things like that as well in the past. But really a lot of that's focused on that kind of sense of belonging piece, right? And finding folks who are, you can relate with, who can have a shared and similar experience with you as a student as well. And a lot of that takes a little bit of that kind of transition time to kind of figure out, well, where are those people out on my campus and how do I interact with them? How do I find them and things like that? So we try and make that connection for students as soon as we can. If any admitted students, you'll get some follow-up from me throughout the admissions process. You'll get some follow-up from the Aspire program, specifically encouraging students to apply, typically starting in end of March, beginning of April, with information about how that program works, and then some of the summer options and things like that too. And they also have a piece at new student registration as well that works with students on getting them signed up for the Aspire program on campus too. The other thing I'll mention too, the Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Office also houses our Campus Pride Center as well. And then Nathan is our gender and sexuality outreach coordinator, who does a lot of our LGBTQ plus programming on campus. So good questions there.
Awesome, thanks.
Other things before I jump to the application process.
Nothing in the chats.
Okay. So we have a UW system application. So you fill out the application right now. Before you get to the personal statement, it takes students right around 15 or so minutes. Some basic biodemographical information. We'll confirm your high school, confirm your residency status. At the end of the application, there's a personal statement that basically I tell students, tell me something about yourself and why River Falls, like why are you interested in coming to our campus? I typically see students get hung up on the essay piece. And I always tell students, I don't need a 5-paragraph MLA cited APA essay. I want you to be real and authentic. And I want you to feel comfortable in what you're sending to us, right? I don't want or need you to send me anything that makes you feel uncomfortable to put that in an essay on your college application. We typically will, it takes right around about 4-ish or so weeks by the time we get your submitted application for us to get your transcripts and then for us to get everything processed and get a decision back to you. We will accept unofficial transcripts on your application, so you can submit those directly on the application and get those uploaded. You can email them over to us. Otherwise, you can have your high school send them over to us as well if they use an online transcript service. Again, we're test optional for admissions, and we're test optional for scholarships as well. So I do not need an ACT or an SAT score. The application fee is currently waived. It's listed as $25 on there now because they haven't told us yet if it's going to be waived for the fall class. So I left it on there in hopes that we're still going to waive it. But that's a UW system mandate. So we're still waiting for guidance from system on what that will look like for the future of the class. Current students who are currently applying for fall of 21, their application is free. For students for fall of 22, that application will go live August 1st. And I'm anticipating we'll get some guidance from system probably in the next month or so on if we'll go back to the $25 application fee or if we'll continue to waive that for students as well. So
David,
there are
a question for you. Do you think that like right now the ACT is optional? Do you think that it will go back to being required, or do you think this is something that might stick around?
Are you asking from a UW system standpoint, or are you asking from a personal and professional admission standpoint?
An admission standpoint.
I think, so it's currently a UW system mandate. I think UW system is going to give each individual campus the ability to make that decision moving forward. I have long been an advocate for test optional admission. I would probably go as far as say test blind admission. I think different campuses will approach that differently. There is already conversation amongst us in the system about how test optional has affected us and things like that. And so I think moving forward, I think there's enough of us who are behind test optional and have saw the benefit from an admission standpoint, getting through the process. I think UW-Madison was being on board for test optional. They'll do pretty much all the research behind it for the system. When we start looking at persistence rates and graduation rates, and if there's been any impact on overall like GPA type stuff, a lot of that will come out of the Star Lab in Madison. So assuming that, and all the research historically has pointed that there's really been no discernible difference between students submitting test scores and not submitting test scores for college persistence and graduation, I think system will allow each individual campus to have that decision and choice. And I would say we would lean towards the option of staying test optional at minimum and potentially going test blind.
Interesting. Cool. Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. I will say I have colleagues in the system who absolutely, as soon as system allows them, will go back to requiring ACT tests, SAT or ACT or SAT. The application is available online. You can get to it from our website. Otherwise, if you are interested in applying to any of the other UW system schools, we're all on the same application. So you can copy your your information over on that standpoint as well, if you're interested in applying to another UW system school from that standpoint. Other questions on the admission process or application process?
Nothing in the chats.
Okay. Let me 1 second, we'll switch back. I just want to cover a couple quick things moving forward on like who our students are on campus and what they do. So while that is loading, like I said before, we have 6,000 total students on our campus. We're undergraduate heavy. As you're applying and looking at different institutions, for the most part, most institutions that grant bachelor's degrees are undergraduate heavy. But what that means is that all of our programming, our events, the students on our campus and the things that we're doing is really focused on our undergraduate population. So if you're looking at interested in study abroad or undergraduate research, like things like that, our partnerships are available for our undergraduate students. And you might find that other institutions will put that focus more on graduate students or doctoral students and things like that. But we really are an institution that focuses on our undergraduate student population from that standpoint. Our average class size is right around 22 students. And your student to faculty ratio is right around 18:1. What that means is that you'll have on average 22 students in the classroom, and that your academic advisor is going to have 17 other advisees. It's important for students because the more students that your advisor has, the less availability they have to work with you and connect with you. All of our faculty serve as our academic advisors. So the same people that you'll see teaching your courses in your classroom, folks who are involved in the industry, the experts in their field, are also going to serve as your academic and career advisors when you're on campus too. So you really do be able to benefit from their experiences in figuring out what, kind of makes the most sense for them in that experience as well. Share that. Sorry, someone else had my PowerPoint, so I just switched back to my original one. So we have 150 clubs and organizations here on campus. I talked a lot about my identity-based organizations, BSU, LSO, Asian American Student Association. We have programs that are going to be specific to your academic program, right? So if you're a psychology major and you want to be part of Psychi, which is the honors psychology organization here on campus, that's an option. You can also be part of Psychi if you're not a psychology major, right? So if there's an academic area of interest that you have, I have an intern who was studying, she's a psychology major, and she really has an interest in plants. So she's part of the horticulture club, right? So you can definitely have interests that are outside of your kind of specific academic program. What I tell students is there's 6,000 students on campus. Someone else has a shared interest with you, right? So if you don't see a registered student organization, go ahead and make one. Well, you can find 2 or 3 friends. The student involvement office will work with you to find 2 or 3 friends. I'm the advisor for the Dungeons and Dragons Club here on campus. Have I ever played Dungeons and Dragons? Absolutely not. But I had a couple interns who came to me and said they needed an advisor. I was willing to be their advisor. They found some other friends and we kind of set up that process, right? So there's different ways that you can work with folks across campus to kind of figure out what makes the most sense for you and be able to build and kind of find that community for you as well too. We have 17 varsity sports here on campus. We compete in the Division III level, which is the WEAC conference. So it's Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. Nationally, it is the toughest Division III conference, top to bottom in terms of national championships won. So we do take pride in that as a system. The picture you're seeing was from our inaugural women's lacrosse season. They're actually just starting their season back up, but they finished second in the conference in their first season, so that was super cool for a lot of our students. Varsity sports is housed out of our Falcon Center facility, which also houses our intramural sports, our club sports, and then any of our other recreation facilities for students here on campus. That was a $63.5 million upgrade that opened in fall of 2018. So it's got brand new strength training equipment. We have brand new cardio equipment. There's free weights in the back. There is 2 rock climbing walls. They have an intramural gym that's open, and then we have 2 large multi-purpose studios they'll use for group fitness classes, or they'll still do like yoga, Zumba. Butts and Guts is the most popular one here on campus, so they'll do different things out of that facility as part of that, and that is included in your tuition as well. So you don't have to pay for any of that piece separately. You just get to go out there and utilize that facility. We have 11 residence halls here on campus. 9 are traditional, 2 are considered suite style. What you're seeing in this picture, everything in wood comes in the residence hall. So they're all set up as double rooms. So you get 2 beds, 2 dressers, 2 desks. If you were to flip this picture around and look towards the door, you would see 2 of the kind of closet spaces for students. And the 2 dresses are typically under that area for students. And then we have common amenities shared in the middle. There's kitchens in all the residence hall rooms as well. And then laundry is also free. It's included in your residence hall fee already. So don't have to worry about paying for quarters or swipes or anything like that when it comes to laundry. And then our suite styles are for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. One is set up as apartment style. The other one's set up as pod style. Very similar to the traditional style, but they have less people per floor in that space as well. UW system has an 2-year on-campus living requirement unless students are within 40 miles of campus or have another extenuating circumstance, and they can work with residence life on what that might be for students as well. Last piece to touch on is this River Falls itself, right? So we've got about 15,000 people in the city of River Falls. You get that small town feel, you get that small town safety and security of knowing who's in that campus community. The thing I like about our campus is that it's a self-contained campus. So we're bookended by residence halls. We put residence halls on east and west side. There's Cascade, which runs on the north side, and then the Kinnickinnick River flows through the south side of campus. So we don't have any apartment buildings or businesses or houses or random things in the middle of campus. So when you're walking from the dining facility to Centennial Hall to your residence hall, you're walking through campus property, right? So you're not going to have to worry about that if you're walking through the city or a neighborhood or anything like that. When you're on campus property, you're on campus property. So you definitely get that safety and security that comes with that. Some cool things to do in the city: the movie theater, which offers really affordable movies for students. They do $5 movies all the time, and then $2 movies on Tuesdays or Wednesdays for students. Thrifting is really big in River Falls as well. Tons of restaurants and shops, super close to the Kinnickinnick River, close to the backside of campus, the falls of River Falls as well, super close for students too. So tons of things to do in the kind of the general River Falls area. But again, also being 30 minutes from Minneapolis, St. Paul, is big for a lot of our students too. If you're heading home, you want to get over for a concert or a sporting event, anything like that, that close proximity is huge for students. And then it becomes really big for students too, looking at internships, first year employment, pieces like that, as you're thinking about, what do I want to do after my life at River Falls. That becomes a big piece for a lot of our students as well. So that is kind of the spiel. Awesome. I will open it up for questions, anything else that anyone wants to know or interested in from me.
Yeah, that's great. Does anybody have any questions? Anything about admissions or what it's like to live live there, or what the dorms are like, or cost, or anything like that?
While you're thinking of that, I will say too, we have a virtual tour. We have all of our residence halls have virtual components online. We have and then we have a full virtual tour, and then we have a full admissions presentation available on our website as well too.
Awesome.
So if you do want to see those, go ahead and check those out on uwrf.edu.
Cool. We did have somebody ask, well, like, what are some of your COVID precautions? Like, what maybe even this year, or maybe what that might look like in the future for students that are on campus?
Yep. So it started in our residence hall. So we're a very residential campus. About 45% or so of our students live on campus. So that started with students being able to, so we limited contact of our students in the residence halls. And so students who were wanted to take courses entirely online were given that option to do so. We set up one facility that is specifically as our quarantine residence hall. So for students who did test positive, that they had their own space and facility to go to that still had an RA, still had a really great, easy connection to campus, dining delivered meals over to those students individually. Classroom capacity was shrunk down to fit CDC recommended social distance and minimal distance guidelines. We did try and give students some in-person components from an academic standpoint. Some of the lab sections, some of the discussion sections, they might have 3, 4, 5 students in a lab space by themselves, performing on an experiment and things like that. There's a mask mandate on campus. UW system requires students to get tested once a week living in the residence halls. Faculty and staff get tested every 2 weeks if we're on campus. And then off-campus students who come to campus for a class are also required to get tested every 2 weeks as well. What that will look like for the fall, we're still waiting to hear additional guidance from UW system, state and local federal guidance, and then CDC guidance, obviously, in that piece as well, too. We're anticipating planning for offering more face-to-face instruction for the fall, and allowing some of our students who want that availability to be able to get back in their classroom spaces and things like that, but also still give students enough flexibility who aren't prepared to come back to campus yet. Sure. Still offering some virtual options for students too.
Awesome. And I think we had one other question, which was if a graduating senior right now had applied and been accepted, what would be when would be a good time to make that final decision for the fall?
Good question. We graduating seniors will start getting registration information from us, registration sign up information from us starting now. That initial email blast went out this week. If you apply for our scholarships, we will send out scholarship information. Our plan is also send out scholarship information beginning of next week. So you'll have your updated scholarship and financial aid letter if you applied for scholarships within the next week. We tend to follow NACAC's guidance on a May 1st decision deadline. Our housing contract is refundable up until May 1st. So if you fill out the housing contract and you decide to go somewhere else, you can get that refunded up until May 1st for us too. So I typically tell students by May 1 is the best to have a decision. That way we can get you in for registration date that still works for your schedule and things like that. Allows you to finalize housing, make sure that you kind of have an idea and plans for the summer as you're kind of going through.
For sure.
If you need to stretch past that, we have a rolling admission process, so we are open for students that. But I do typically tell students, and I've seen that the longer you wait to kind of finalize that decision, unless there's if there's 2 schools that you're debating between and like one school hasn't given you a financial aid award letter yet,
sure.
Obviously wait, right? You're gonna want to see that. But if you start getting into June, July and haven't made that commitment yet to an individual school, but you have all the information, those are the students that that I see struggle when it comes to housing, financial aid, make sure that they have everything they need set up and in line, and kind of that transition, so to speak, from high school to college over the summer.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
I have a question back to COVID. So you said
Yep.
students and faculty and staff have to be tested up to once a week. Does the university have a place where students go, and is there a cost to that? To the student, I guess.
You're talking if a student tests positive?
No, just to be tested, because you.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, no, we test on campus. I test every Wednesday. So I'm in office every other week.
Okay.
And so the Wednesday that I'm in office, I test every Wednesday in the morning. They're doing rapid tests in there. It's in, it used to be an old student center that we converted into like a couple different academic departments and buildings and things like that. We've minimized those departments. We built a new student success center. So this new building, we actually have contract, so to speak, out with UW System to build a new science and technology center on campus in the site of this current building. So essentially right now it houses our textbooks are still housed there. And then some of our like maintenance and facilities. So what they did is they converted this old classroom space into a testing site. We have a partnership with, I don't remember the name of the clinic. But yeah, so all of our students are tested it's free of cost to students on campus. UW System is covering part of that, campus is covering part of it, and then part of it came through in the CARES Act for students on that front. So there's no cost to students for that. We'll test students who have symptoms can get tested in between, like if you test, you all of a sudden you develop symptoms on a Friday and want to get tested that day, but you tested negative on Wednesday, you can still come in and do that as well too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, if nobody has any questions, it's 4:04. It's usually the end of our day here with our students. So David, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate all the information that you've given us today. Hopefully it's been helpful for the students, and with our recording, I'm sure it'll help students that weren't here too. So
yes, thank
Absolutely.
you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My email contact information, your staff have it. So anything else comes up, any additional questions, just go ahead and reach back out. Send me an email, give me a phone call. We can work through it.
sounds good. Thank you very much, David.
All right.
Have a great rest of your day.
y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a good
Bye.
day.
Have a nice day, y'all.
You
Bye.
too.